I'm Paul Dutnall, CEO of WorkLife. We're a B Corp certified workspace provider in central London, Manchester and Reading, designed for businesses who know the right environment drives exceptional culture and supports high business performance. This is the Leader Circle podcast. The Leader Circle podcast is designed for business leaders, founders and CEOs to learn, to share experiences and to hear from other leaders who are building and scaling their businesses. Today's guest has spent 2 decades inside some of the UK's fastest growing companies. He helped to scale Social Chain from a startup into a global agency alongside Steven Bartlett and Dominic McGregor. And then he joined the executive team at THG through the UK's largest ever tech IPO at 5.4 billion. He then took everything he'd learned in those businesses and built something of his own. Tomorrow's Potential, which is a private collective for founders and CEOs and leaders who are scaling their own businesses. His core idea is simple. It's about the fact that a business only grows as fast as the person running it. If you fix the business without fixing the operator, all you get is more profitable burnout and blockages in that growth journey. And he's also a valued member of our Leaders Circle at WorkLife. And this is a conversation in particular that I've been looking forward to. Alex, welcome. Thank you for coming along.
Thanks so much. I need Paul to do an intro every time I step out on stage.
I'm available. I can come with you to,
yeah, that was great.
To the next meeting that you have and tee you up.
No, great to be here.
Yeah, we're privileged to have you, and I think the things we'll talk about today are really poignant for the audience for this podcast and the people that we try to serve with it. Thinking about some of those organisations you worked in to start with, particularly Social Chain, I'd love to know what it was like to be in that business in those early stages of hypergrowth. I'm sure you've got stories. I'm sure it was an amazing environment to be in.
Yeah, it was. So I joined 2015. So Social Chain began probably, I think 6-7 months, used to be called War Park, different business idea here, then pivoted. And the value at the time was in, we owned some of the largest Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, back then, pages on the internet. And the War Park thesis was, can you drive people to a website and then monetize the website? Whereas actually people wanted to be featured on the social media pages back then. And so that's when I joined. I knew Steve, a guy called Michael Heaven, I played rugby with, way back in the day, and he was like, oh, you should come join, we're doing something exciting. Came in, they were in a shared office space and they'd just acquired or leased the building next door. And he's like, I'll show you around. He took me into this place and it's a bit like derelict, ceiling was falling in. But what I did remember was the excitement, the people. It felt like I belonged in the environment.
Yeah. And could you sense the vision that they had?
Yeah.
Even standing in this sort of derelict, empty space for what they wanted to create.
The vision was a huge thing, but also more than anything, everyone was smart. And I think we talked about this earlier, didn't we, around you want to be in rooms where you're not the cleverest person there. And in that scenario, I felt like I had a hell of a lot to learn about social media. My background was I did both parents come from working class backgrounds. So my mum was from Newcastle, my dad's from inner city London. And so their view of success was go and get an education, which I did, get on a graduate program, which I did. I got 2 years into the Virgin Media one. I was like, this is just not my people, not my thing, very corporate, very bureaucratic.
How did that awareness come in? And this is a slight tangent, but it that probably resonates with a few people, particularly founders that are listening to this.
Yeah.
How did that come about where you were clear enough with yourself to say, this isn't my path?
Yeah. So, well, 2 things. First thing, I was fortunate and I was young, so I could take risks. It's different, say now when I've got kids, family, etc. It's much harder. But back then I could take a lot more risks. And then number 2, I asked myself back, one of my old friends actually was my old coach. He always used to go, you've got to follow your passion. And I just remember those words, follow your passion, everything else will come. And the reason he used to say that to us is because if you want to become great at anything, and back in the day, we won the national championships we'd never played before, 2 years earlier, then we won the national championships. But we just trained more than everybody else.
Because you loved it.
Because we loved it, because he created an environment which was fun, creative, we had high standards. And I took a lot of that, who I am today, from him and the kind of the ethos and the principles he taught. And I got into the corporate world. And when I was doing things and pushing, so for example, I set up a partnership with one of my friends in Manchester in sales. I got a written warning. They were like, you can't do that. You need to come through the right channels. That then led to, I think, 40 or 50 grand's worth of business. And it was just like, well, so just because you've always done that, you're a graduate, so you can't do those things. So I was like, well, this is not for me. I wanted to do things and push boundaries, and I come from Manchester, so that's the ethos, right? Yeah. Work hard, do things differently, and so that's when it was against my core value system to stay. So I was fortunate enough to take the risk, and at the time, I knew Michael, and he in heaven was saying, "Come join us." So I moved back to Manchester, and that's
credit to you that you were able to recognize that at that time. I think thinking of myself, I would not have been so self-aware to draw that out and articulate that. Even now, I'd probably struggle.
Yeah, yes. So then I joined, and bearing in mind I've done a 4-year business degree and then a 2-year leadership program. Steve dropped out after like 1 lecture. Dom also dropped out of uni. I think Hannah was a teacher. Yeah, Hannah just finished her teacher's degree. She might have done 1 year. And Hev dropped out of when we were at uni in his 2nd year. So I joined, and I'd had all this experience of how you write pitch decks, how you collaborate, email systems, and we had none of that. People hear the story now and they think it's amazing, but right back then we were building the infrastructure from the ground up, which I actually think is really important for anyone listening if you're starting a company, because you have a naivety that you can do things differently, and you basically build from first principles of what you know today. Whereas when you're an incumbent, you often have a certain way of doing things which might not be conducive to success in today's world. And we lent into that with how we designed the office, how we went about doing campaigns, how we outreach to people. It was all very different than what the typical marketing agencies were doing.
I want to get into that, but I have a question about joining with, pretty robust education going in, and a business education at that. And then joining a team of people who had dropped out, after 1 lecture, sort of sidesteps all of that and working with them, building with them. What's your reflection now on sort of theory and education and qualification versus practice? Do you have a view on that?
Yeah, I do. And also I've got kids, so hopefully they're not going to watch this. But to be fair, people ask, would I send them to university? And I don't think so, because I learned more in that first year than I did in the whole 6 years prior. So you're learning how to deal with people, motivate people, hire people, build a culture. You're learning how business actually gets done. So do you have something which creates enough value for someone to pay consistently? Yeah. How you then retain that, manage the client relationships. None of that you really get from learning the 4 Ps of marketing. And a lot of what I'd learned because of the time period. So I was at uni 2008, 9 to 2011, 12. And social media wasn't as big a thing back then. So what we were learning was quite not old school, but more traditional marketing.
Yeah, soon to be very out of date.
Out of date. So whereas I've gone in there and Catty and Hannah have gone, well, we can make anything trend in half an hour. And so that's what, if you think about the problem back then for brands, is how do you become known, especially if you're an unknown brand, or if you're a boring product, how do you become trending so everybody wants to talk about your business? So that was the talk trigger. That was our kind of beachhead into a company where we can make you trend in half an hour.
And this was the seed that led to everything social media did next, right?
So basically I took over the commercial arm of the business. So Steve was the visionary. He was one of the smartest people I've ever met. He's talking about where we're going to take the company. Dom was operations to manage all the communities. And I would go in and take any lead that came off Steve and then build out the proposal pitch, then build out the teams off the back of it. So because of my contacts at Virgin, one of the guys I knew ran the biggest sports conference in the world. It was called SoccerX. And I knew obviously that we could get a lot of traction with making things trend. And I knew that conference is like people from FIFA, UEFA, football clubs. They're quite old school. They didn't really get social. So this was the September, because it's when I met my now wife. I always remember the days. September the 8th, we went to SoccerX in Manchester, which was the first time it was in Manchester, hosted in Manchester, the global conference. And I'd got Cello to get us a speaking slot on the, I don't even think we paid, because he was trying to sell it last minute. I was like, mate, we're a startup, got no money, but we'll do something great.
Yeah,
we'll do something like
10 years later, you're still trading on that.
Yeah, everyone's going to talk about it. And we had a load of big football pages. Nick Speakman had built out a big football network. So at that time, Arsenal hadn't spent any money on an outfield football player. And all of the media, especially on Twitter, noise was about Arsene Wenger, he's not spending enough, etc. And so on the Sunday night, we were thinking, well, what can we do? Steve was speaking on the Monday or the Tuesday. The team went, well, why don't we create a fictionary football player and call him an anagram of SoccerX, so Rex Secco, which made out SoccerX. We made him 34 million quid, 16 years old, and we had one image of this South American player and one gif of him going around the defender and chipping the goalkeeper. And we just blew him up on the Sunday night. Didn't know if it was going to work or not. Starts trending number 1. Sky Sports News the next day. It had something like 2 or 3 million impressions on this guy that doesn't exist. Piers Morgan talking about him. And so then we get on stage, Steve does the story, tells the story of how the company started, and then tells the Rex Echo story, and then says, everyone get on your phones. This guy, who's now trending globally #1, was a concept which we created 48 hours ago. Yeah. So off the back of that, you can imagine all the brands, Adidas, anyone that's selling products, Puma, they flew us out to Germany to go and speak to their teams of how they can do product marketing, especially in sports. All the football clubs wanted to work with us for kit launches. We then, off the back of that, got a lot of media attention. And then we were on the front page of the Times, Telegraph. These are the kids that control what all the other kids talk about. And that's a good lesson for anybody just thinking about your product or your business and going, what is the headline somebody's going to write about us? And then reverse engineering what the product or service you can offer is. And if it's vanilla, if it's wallpaper, it's not going to sell. And I don't mean that so you should go outlandish. You see people now just making crazy claims. It should link to the value you can offer to your clients. So us, it was like building the brand awareness of a company's products. And that became our hero product in. So and then we started building the team off the back of that.
I love the idea of thinking back from a headline that relates to the value, and then reverse engineering how you create a scenario where that headline would be real. Yeah, I think that's what you guys did.
Exactly.
Was that the launch pad really?
That was a launch pad, yeah. That first year, and then so we grew quick. So we grew. I think it was like 100 people we added in year one. So really fast growth, and we were all relatively young, 22, 23.
How would you describe the culture? Because fair to say Social Chain is probably as famous for its culture as it was for what it did and the work.
So Steve and Dom were always like, what company would we want to work in? And this is something actually quite useful, and I've always taken this on now in terms of the people that you need in the organization to be successful. Ask yourself, what type of people do we need to win in whatever field or whatever game you're playing? So back then, we would win if we had the best people on social media. So that wouldn't be people that have done a 10-year career in marketing. They don't get it. They're not on it. So we needed to get we had a lot of like 16, 17, 18-year-olds who were kids in their bedroom who were obsessed with social and were tweeting every day.
And is that how you found them? I was going to ask you about the process of saying, okay, we've identified what we need. How do you then source based on that need?
And obviously, you look back in hindsight, and this probably feels like it's like strategy. It wasn't but it kind of was, because we know if we want to live and work in this environment, what do we need? We wanted FIFA. So we created this area similar to this with cushions where everyone can play FIFA, slide, ball pit, beer tap. Everyone was drinking at the time. So Friday, everyone could come bring friends to the office. And off the back of that, people started talking about the business. And the slide cost a load of money. But if you think about that, back in Manchester, no one had a slide, really. Whereas it was like Google in London and San Francisco. Yeah. So it was like we were being different. So it's like, what can you do that's different that people want? So people wanted to go into that big area and play FIFA after work and chill out. They wanted a table tennis table. So that was one thing about the culture. Second thing which we did, which I think was fundamental, is we actually hired someone to focus on it. So we hired a head of happiness back then, which is unheard of. And people are like, oh, it's too wishy-washy. It's like HR or people, but actually someone whose role is to try and find out, how can I make your experience from when you walk in this building magical? How can I make your job easier? How can I remove the bottlenecks which you're going through? Sakira came in. She's phenomenal at that. Onboarding boxes, making sure the little client touches were right, making sure that everyone had the birthday, the town halls, everything was adding those little things which most people don't focus on. And I call them the critical non-essentials, because they're not essential to you winning, potentially, but they are critical if you want to win a championship long term. So you might not win the game from them, but you will win the league or the championship from them. And that's a concept I got from Clive Woodward. He actually wrote about it in his book when we won the 2003 World Cup, because I'm a big rugby fan, played rugby all my life. And he would put in blackout blinds in Australia when they did the tour. I was like, why you got blackout blinds? It's a critical non-essential. It's something that means that the player's likelihood that they're going to sleep for 6, 7, 8 hours, when we're going from hotel to hotel, everyone has a blackout blind. Everyone had a laptop, an iPad. The players back then didn't have that. So you could watch your game film, you could watch the plays on your laptop. It's like little critical non-essentials. And the same for us, that she was one of them, and she would focus on them for the company. And I think if you obsess about the little things, and Steve was big on this, music when you walked in, the atmosphere, how people treat each other, the standards, the work ethic. He didn't just say these things and expect people to do it. He lived it, breathed it. Yeah. And because he was obsessive about it, it meant we were as leaders, but then everyone else was. So then people would adopt that mentality and culture rather than them bringing another culture to the business.
So for you, you would say the culture was intentional. It was by design, even if it was instinctive, led by the people who were running the business.
100%, yeah. And I often think, when you think about culture, it's usually like behaviors.
Yes.
Like, and usually the environment dictates behaviors, it dictates thought, belief systems. And the one thing which I think is huge is belief in a startup. 1 in 10 succeed, the majority fail. And we had loads of moments where it was like life or death on a couple of moments. We had one where someone hacked our email, sent this offensive emails to half our clients. We lost about 40% of clients in one day because we didn't have two-factor authentication on and all the things you should do as a company. But come back to the belief, when those things are happening, you as leaders can't tell anybody, and you have to create an environment where other people believe that where you're going is exciting, inspirational, and that it's possible. And so we try to always focus on, and all the other companies I've been part of, like what are the little bits of momentum? So the Friday wins update, the town hall, if you get great feedback from a client, sharing it in the WhatsApp groups so that people, even if they're not involved in that project, they're like, we're going somewhere here. Just opened a new office, just had this hire. Because there's going to be negative news. There's going to be lots of negativity when you're starting or trying to build something, especially if it's new. And our job and our role and your role as the founder and CEO and the leaders of that company is to create the belief that it's possible.
With creating the belief and the inspiration, a lot of the examples we've talked about are, I think about that sort of aggregation of marginal gains concept, which sounds similar to what you described. And it's these regular and small but joined up interventions that compound up to something. How much of it is that, these smaller touches that add up, so these micro wins that create belief, and how much of it is something sort of up here, which is setting a tone, setting a vision, and bringing people along and people are opting into? And I assume it's both, but how do they relate?
So, especially because we had a lot of young people, when someone joins an organization and they don't have much lived experience, they will adopt the behavior and character traits of the people close to them. It's like our kids now. Kobe and Sloan will be like, what I was scared about is apparently your kids will be influenced the most by their top 5 friends' parents, not you. Because they spend time around their house and they see what they're doing and their belief system. And it's the same really when people join the organization. So they need to see you doing certain things, behavior traits, actions, how you communicate, how you speak to each other, how you speak to a client, so that it then becomes their natural language, their natural tone. And I think that's where it's so important as the leaders of the organization to set that. And then try and reward people based on, like you were talking about, the marginal gains. So the best example in the world I always think is Kaizen, same concept, but Toyota did that where they do 1 million new ideas every single year because their managers are also trained as innovation managers. So their job is to make their team better, but also how can they encourage them to create more Kaizens? And if your Kaizen is successful, so say, for example, there was one in the manufacturing plant where this lady said, instead of people, when they come and do the tour, putting their bags down, which is a risk, a fire risk, we should just create the hooks on the wall where they can hang them. They then got paid every time that then one of those Kaizens was implemented. And we did similar things. People got rewards, people got nights out with their partner or their friends or family based on doing things and making things better. So I think that's like crucial, is to firstly set the standards, but secondly, incentives drive behavior. Charlie Munger says it the best. So show me the incentives and I'll show you the money. It was his famous quote. And that is one of the truest things in the world. If you're trying to get someone to do something, look at the incentives. And what I mean by that is you'll have financial remuneration incentives, extrinsic incentives, but also what are the intrinsic incentives? So is the vision clear and the purpose of the organization? Are they motivated? Are they going to get a sense of social camaraderie if they achieve it with their teammates and stuff like that? How is peer recognition implemented? Do you have like some kind of format where people can shout each other out so they feel recognized, they feel appreciated? You want people to feel seen. So these types of things, like the incentive structure, if you're having any problems with your behaviors of people, you've either got the wrong people, the wrong incentive structure, or the clarity of direction is not clear.
And on the former there, the wrong people, I think you said those first 50 hires, I think, is that my right, is the number used, but that first tranche of hires will set the direction for the company for the rest of its time. What's so important about the first few people that join? And as a follow-up, how could someone think about and approach getting those hires right, particularly when you're founding a business and you're growing? There's probably a level of desperation or urgency and need to just fulfill a task, to do a thing, to keep the ship afloat. How would you coach someone through that portion of their journey?
It's the hardest thing because you've got to delegate as well. We'll get onto that. But first thing is hiring the right people. First thing I would do is look at what are the critical capabilities that we need to win in our business. Like I said, for us back then, it was social media. Yours could be making rockets on space, Elon. Yours could be podcasting. So you need audio experts. So it's like identify the actual skill set, which if you hire the best person in that role, you would win in your industry. That's number one. Then number two is then how do you attract that person? And so they want to know that if they join your organization, the incentives are there long term because people are motivated by that and it needs to be at a certain standard. But more importantly, the vision is inspiring and speaks to their belief system and how they want to act and what they can tell their friends or family about the company and how exciting it's going to be. The third one is then progress. So when they join, how quick can you either train them, or the progression path isn't 2, 3, 4 years, but they can come and do some of their best work. And if they do, the progression, people want to feel like their progression, the progress principle. And then number 4 is people care about the team that they're joining and the manager and the culture. So how can you showcase that before they've even stepped foot in the interview? And that's what we did great, is there was always someone, Dodge was videoing everything. It was going on YouTube, Instagram, so people could visually see all the amazing things about the office and culture before they even attended the interview. So ideally, you want to start documenting as much as possible. Then I always look for, I've actually got if anyone wants it, just message me after. I've got a list of the character traits that you need to ask questions about for people in that first 50 to 100, because they define the direction of the business and they can change the culture because they make up such a high percentage of the people. Just to give you a few, one of them, you need generalists, really. You can't really have too many specialists when you're especially below 50, but ideally you want someone that has a high bias for action.
Yes, yeah.
So you need people to be able to make a move quickly because you don't have the runway or the stability of a large organization, the resources. So you want high bias for action. The second quality trait, which is important to look for when you are hiring your first 50 people, is coachability. So you're going to have lots going on and you don't want to get into micromanagement, which is often the flaw which happens when it's your business and you care so much about it. And so you want people that can take feedback really well, and not just take it well, but they need to then change their behavior or their actions as a byproduct. You can test for that, especially if you give them feedback in the in the interview. You can then see how they respond to it, what they would do next time. So I would always look for coachability.
And I guess see them apply it next time.
Exactly.
See that it's coming through and people can translate it into their action.
Exactly. The third thing is adaptability, because it is a roller coaster. Scaling a company, things change, regulations change, clients leave, people leave. And so you want people that are okay with that world of chaos at some times. And it's also magical at other times. So adaptability is really important. Then integrity. So you could have smart people, high energy people, but if they don't have the right moral code, and they don't have integrity, that can poison a culture in so many different ways. And that's happened to us a couple of times in a couple of organizations. And it's really clear because they can then almost like spread negativity throughout the organization.
How do you test for these things, or how do you hire for these things? How do you ensure, if you're listening to this, I'm bought into, I want people who are made of that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
How can I increase the probability that people I'm hiring
have these things,
have those qualities? So
there's 3 things. So I've got a list of questions based on all of these character traits. So if anyone wants them after this, just message me. I can send you the full list. So I would ask those questions in there. Then you also want to get 3 references. And often you want to get a reference from a peer, also from a boss, and also from somebody that just knows them. So and then I've got a list of questions which I can also share afterwards, which is things like, would you rehire this person again? if you were to rate them out of 10, what would you give them across different spectrums, marketing, culture, etc.? And if they say 8 out of 10, then the follow-up question is, what are they missing? What's the, why not a 10? Because then you often get, because people are nice, especially if someone's left and it's not bad.
The other point there, which maybe is an obvious one, is the fact that you're calling up the references to have a proper conversation about somebody rather than sending something by email or well, those sort of traditional reference requests. You really want to get to know them. This is a great opportunity to learn from someone who has been there and worked with them closely or knows them closely.
Exactly that. And people often don't do it. It's overlooked. But if you've got, especially if you've got a recruiter or you're spending money, and it's not just that, the impact on the team, if you then got to fire them within probation, it's well worth 2 hours of conversation at that time period. And then the final thing is challenge them in the room, because if it's virtual or on the CV screen, difficult to try and get that information because people can prepare for certain things. Whereas in the room, I would then have questions to challenge them. So let's take bias for action. It would be, and I was speaking to Sophie from your team about this, and I think it's still questions which get asked at other organizations around, if this happened and your emails got hacked, what would be the first thing that you would do? They would then come back with something. And then the second question would be like, that's not a possibility. What would be the next thing you do? Because someone usually has something good first, but then you want to see bias for action. Well, how quickly are they going to think in that moment?
And agility.
And agility in a moment. So there's lots of different ways to do it. And I wouldn't make the interview process too nice. You want to challenge them. You want to set expectations, set standards. And that'd be my best piece of advice.
Expectation setting as a general principle, I think, is one that for me stands out as super important for the person joining and for the organization to be on the same page day one with what to expect. I think a lot of stuff falls down when there's a gap between those things.
And have you heard of the Pygmalion effect?
Yes.
Yeah. So we'll know it from mainly in sports, but it's a study they did where people will tend to rise on more occasions than not to the expectations that you set. Whereas in an organization, especially if it's your first team that you've managed, you want them to like you, you want to be liked, and you don't often set difficult or challenging standards. And that is where the best teams separate, because I'm a United fan. I grew up in the 90s in Manchester with Sir Alex Ferguson. The expectations and the standards across how they behaved, when they signed the charity balls, what time they got to training, the effort they put in. So training was actually harder than game time. They were the standards, and they weren't the standards in other teams or other organizations. So that is one of the things that if you're building out a team, is think about Pygmalion effect, because it's high expectations, high standards. But what you then need with that is high psychological safety and support. Yeah. And if you only have this, it creates a very high performance-y culture where people don't feel like they can fall back or be vulnerable with that team. And I think about the water polo team I mentioned before. We were really successful because we could be very open and vulnerable and honest when we're struggling or training's difficult. We had 4 or 5 AM sessions 3-4 times a week, and stuff wasn't always going right. But because those people would support you in those hard moments, it meant that other people would take the slack when you're struggling, and I would take the slack off someone else if they were struggling. So you need a real focus on how you can create those relationships and deep bonds, which is difficult in today's world because remote world, people are coming from different cultures, different backgrounds, and you want to create experiences that get people to open up and build those bonds outside of the work bonds, outside of, oh, can you help me with this? It's like outside of work, how can I find out more information about you, your family, your culture, your background, your heritage, what you care about, what you don't care about. And we actually created in Wiser, one of the other companies, do you remember The Sims? Yes. So we created a create your own sim. And I put a load of questions in there for the teams, and they would then fill out, what am I a morning or an afternoon person? What's my personality type? Red, yellow, the box model. What things will cheer me up if I'm in a bad mood? What things are going to piss me off? And then everybody had access to each person's sim. So so I won't say his name because he might get embarrassed, but I knew that one of the guys, one of the senior leaders on the team, liked Adele and hot, warm bubble baths if he was in a bad mood. So actually, when he was ill one day, I actually sent to his house, Amazon primed him like a bubble bath set and sent him the playlist on Spotify for Adele, which is like funny in the moment. But also then his now wife opened the door and she's like, he's sending you like pink bubble baths, but he remembered it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And you just need other people to have that system or that knowledge to then go, right, actually, I can help out Maddie or Glenn or Jane. You know, I know what I can do, me as a team, to make them better. And they know what they can do to make me better. That really creates high performance culture.
Makes sense. We talked a lot about people. We talked
Yep.
quite a bit about culture. I also feel we scratched only the surface on both. But what about direction, which was the other big component we talked about with Envision? How would you advise someone to set a clear enough direction that everybody in the org, and we've touched on it already, kind of look at and go, I want a piece of that. I can opt into that. I can understand my role in that. And I'm here for that journey. So you go through the hard stuff because you're bought into what's on the other side of it.
Yeah, so this is a thing which most people overlook and don't get right from the early stages, which causes a lot of challenges. Because if you're bringing in great A players, I call them, into the organization, they will have expectations of what success looks like, but you need to define what that is for your business, and they need to buy into that, and everybody needs to be aligned on that's the North Star and that's where we're going. So first things first is to go and you set the time frame. Could be 5 years, could be 20 years, could be 10 years. I like 10 years because I think we overestimate what we can achieve in 1 year and we underestimate what we could achieve in 10. And the video that Mr. Beast did is a great example of that from 2015, where he auto-uploaded a video 10 years later. And in that video, it was like, if I don't have 1 million subscribers in 10 years, I'm going to be a failure. You look at him now, literally 2025, it got released, 446 million subscribers. So we overestimate that. So in 10 years' time, what in your industry do you want to change or shape? What core team, people, culture, offices, do you want to be global? Do you want to just be in the UK? What products and services, what innovation do you want to have created? What do you want your brand and reputation to be known as? And like the revenue profitability figures as well. You want to just go through that. There's those kind of 5 or 6 things and just brainstorm as much as possible. These are all the things which, if I was to 10x or 100x what we're doing now, this would be really exciting.
Yeah.
Get them all down. Then you want to just create 3 to 4 core ones. And you could do this with your leadership team and go, right, if we achieved this, would we be on the way to achieving the mission? So why we started the business, it might have been to do marketing in a different way. It could be to make sure everyone's fed in every country around the world. Whatever your mission is, or the purpose behind the organization, what would be a point in the future that signifies that you are on the right track to achieving your mission? That's number one. Get that real clear, defined, and have objectives along the way. So you have a 3-year milestone, then you have 12-month annual goals, then quarterly. So every time, like I mentioned before about momentum, every time you achieve one of those things, you are ticking the box in someone's mind going, this is the company I want to be at.
Yes.
We're on our way.
On the path.
And we're on the path.
And this can really happen.
Exactly. And it's like the marathon. People, you have that big elation after you're in the marathon and you get a big dip. But on the training, you're getting slow dopamine releases because you're achieving, right, I've gone a little bit faster this week. Oh, I've done 24K rather than 20K. Same with business. It's like you want them to have that momentum, those milestones on the way. So that's how I'd go about it.
And how do you distill that down into individuals in the team, understanding how they fit in? Okay, Alex, I'm on board. I buy into the direction. I want a piece of that. I want to contribute. Help me understand how I can go about my work to make sure I'm steering us in that direction.
Yeah, well, let's do real life example. Let's go work life. So vision for the future, take a period, 5 years, is to become the number one globally or number one in the UK?
Our mission at the moment, or our vision at the moment, is to be the workplace of choice for small businesses in the UK.
Small businesses in the UK. Okay, so let's go. How many small businesses are in the UK? There's probably 3-4 million.
Oh, it's a big market.
Yeah.
I think it's 90% of all businesses or so.
So let's just, because it's probably completely wrong and someone's going to reply saying, well, that's way more or way less. Yeah, just say 5 million. So let's go over the next 12 months, we want to get to 500,000 people, either in the workspace or in our network or in the community. Then you go, right, individual goals. If it's the marketing team, could we start to build an email newsletter or social media following, which has this quarter, 100,000 small and medium-sized businesses signed up? Because we know that then that's going to lead to a percentage of them probably signing up to the newsletter, a percentage of them coming to do a visit or do a tour. If you're in sales, it then could be, right, if we want small businesses, right, we probably need X amount of people in. So I need to then hit 15 new people coming to the spaces every single week. Yeah. if you are in the growth team, it's like, right, if we need that many people in SMEs, we're at 14 sites now. We probably need to be at 100 sites over the next 3 years. So I need to then get another 25 sites this year. So you see that one kind of destination, you just build it out based on whatever their role is, but it needs to be tied, like the NASA example with the janitor. When JFK asked him, what do you do? And he's like, I'm trying to help put a man on the moon.
Yeah.
You want everyone's
be tied to this.
Yeah, everyone's role, the dovetailing effect, needs to be tied to whatever this is. So they feel like they're coming to work every day, they're inspired, and they're getting promoted and progression, but also they're contributing to something bigger than just themselves or just their team. It's actually contributing to something collectively.
And that's a pretty key one, particularly after a point, to avoid siloed working, to avoid people kind of going off in their own directions. How do you keep a team that's getting bigger and maybe more specialized at this point, coordinated and rowing in the same direction towards the same destination?
Exactly. And what I'd also do is, we talked about incentive structures earlier. I would do 50% of your bonus / incentive scheme is tied to the company goals. So the company hitting these targets.
As opposed to individual goals.
As opposed to it all being individual. It's just a little small change, and then 50% is based on your performance and your culture.
Which is also cultural, right? Going back to culture. It sets a tone for how we're going to work here.
Exactly. And then also, if someone asks someone else to do something in their team, in a different team to them, they're way more incentivized to say yes, because they know actually that could help us, which is going to affect me. Because human beings are selfish, there's loads of things which we're amazing at, but deep down we're trying to protect ourselves from way back in the caveman days. And that's one of the things, safety, security, which then relates to how much you can get paid, living, life, family, all the costs. So in order to impact their behavior long term, a good person will do that anyway. But some people will always think, well, actually, I've got 5 other things I've got to do by 6 o'clock today. I'm probably not going to prioritize that. But if you do 50% of the goals are based on the company, you'd be surprised how many people then add that to the list and they'll stay till 7.
Well, it solves that sort of principal agent problem a little bit, doesn't it? It aligns people's motives. We talked about motivation and incentive earlier.
Yeah.
So before we wrap up, we've done a lot on the business as a sort of the operating system on the business. We've talked about people and direction and culture and how that rolls into a vision. And we've talked about some of the scenarios and examples that you've experienced and drawn from. There's a sort of fourth layer in your framework, which is about the leader themselves and how a leader can sustainably perform at a high level and sort of unbottleneck themselves. Do you mind if we talk a bit about that before we move on? What is your advice to the people that, for example, join your collective at Tomorrow's Potential to make sure they are able to perform consistently in the way they need to?
It's a huge factor of what we focus on when anyone joins, which is unusual because it sometimes can be pushed to the last thing on the to-do list because you've got a finite amount of time in a day, hours in a day, and your health, you're on the go, you're probably not eating the best that you possibly could, and often the gym or working out gets pushed to the last priority. Now, I had an experience when I was 16 years old playing rugby with my dad, father-son rugby game, where he was hit late in a tackle and had a heart attack on the pitch. For the 2 to 3 years before that, he was traveling up and down the UK, sales direct manager or director role, eating, you McDonald's, unhealthy food, not getting the right exercise.
On-the-go food.
On the go. Yeah. And 2 of his arteries were blocked to his heart, and the tackle then ruptured the 3rd one. Fortunately, he was rushed to hospital, open heart surgery, survived. But that memory for me is always stuck because they didn't care. And even the closest people to him in the company, they obviously cared for the week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks afterwards, but then the impact is your family and your relationship and all of that broke down. The parents separated. So that was a big thing for me where I thought your health is your foundation. So no matter how much you build the organization, the company and the team, if your health isn't there, you're not good for anybody. And especially if you've got more people relying on you team-wise, you need to be in the best possible shape. You need to treat yourself like an athlete. And because I came from an athletic background when I was growing up, I almost lost that going into the world of work. And then you get into this roller coaster. And it was only after I'd had our 2nd child where I thought, I need to get back into that shape. And it was a change in my identity where it's like, I am an athlete, I am a runner, and we work out and do stuff and push our bodies. And off the back of that, the business and all of my endeavors have been more successful because I've focused on that.
And you can trace that.
I can trace it from that moment.
The fact that you've built this identity, you've reflected it in your lifestyle, and it's playing back into your professional life.
Playing back. So better in my relationships, in work, better with client relationships. I stop drinking as a byproduct. I make healthier decisions. I'm more present for the kids. I feel much better. You look much better, which then makes you feel much better, which makes you perform much better. Like Coach Prime says, look good, feel good, play good. So it just impacts everything. And there are small changes to the system which you can do to swap out delivery every night to healthy Thrive meals in, or Simmer Eats, whatever the thing is. And then it's like, could you get a chef? Everyone thinks, oh, that's really bougie. It's actually, well, you can get a chef probably for 800 quid a month, which you could probably expense certain elements of it, which then is, even for your team, could you get, we had some people coming and cooking for the team. That then impacts what they're eating, what they're putting in their body, which impacts how they think, which impacts their performance. And it's just small little changes which you can do. And it doesn't mean you have to do a high rocks or an ultra marathon. And one of the guys that he's a good friend, actually, he runs a company called The Daily Body Coach. He's got a great analogy, and he says, rather than saying, I'm either going to do a workout or not do a workout, you go, am I green? Am I amber? Am I red? And red is not doing a workout. Your body's sore, you don't have any time. But an amber could be, I'll do 10 minutes. I'll do some abs. Go for a walk around the block, or I'll do a little run. And a green's like, you'll do a full CrossFit session or a high rock session or a 10K or 15K. But most people go black or white. And what we try and do is just focus on those elements, because it's going to make you a better parent, a better partner, and a better boss.
Do you find that's especially true of the sorts of people that you're in front of, who are high performers, who like to do things wholeheartedly and be all in, that it has to be black or white? Either I'm fully committing to this or I can't do it at all.
Yeah, exactly that. And one of the guys, Richie, I hope you won't mind me saying this, but he messaged me. We went to his brand shoot and he had his top off the whole time. He's like, I'm in the best shape of my life. And he's so proud of it. Great. And that's what you want. It's like, because off the back of that, the business is doing well. And then also he's setting the bar for everybody in the team. So it's not when we were growing up, it was like CEOs like, bit overweight, working all the time, McDonald's,
It was the archetype.
It was the archetype, wasn't it?
Hustle culture's been an archetype for a long time.
And we want to change that. There's a way of doing that. And I think about regret minimization, because when you're 50, 60, 70, the decisions we make now in our 30s, 40s, 50s will then impact how we live. And they're irreversible. You can't then, they're irreversible. So as in, you can't then suddenly change and go, oh, I'm just going to start being healthy then. You've already done enough damage. It's too late. So now at the time, if you're in your late 20s, 30s, where the next decade is even more important for that side.
If you're listening to this and this resonates, but you're thinking, and you can see how it happens, you can intellectually grasp all of this, and still be hard charging at your business, feel like you're keeping so many plates spinning that this all falls to the bottom of the list and inevitably doesn't happen. How would you advise someone to take that first step to kind of push out of this and start to?
That's a great question. So this is something I actually do myself. Take a habit which you know is a bad one. Could be screen time at night time. It could be delivery meals. It could be get McDonald's on a Friday, whatever the thing is, and swap that every month. Swap one bad habit for one which you think is better. So it could be like, I'm going to make 3 home cooked meals this week. And then what you also need is a reward mechanic. So if I do that for 3 times in a quarter, so for each month, I then reward myself with something that I like. So going to a spa day. I never normally do that because it's seen as like bougie and busy, etc. But I say, if I do that for my health, I'm going to give myself this thing which I really enjoy. And that thing needs to be personal to you. It could be you book going to see your favourite football team, or you book going to see Harry Styles who's on at Wembley. Whatever the thing is, book something which is going to make you feel good. And you've got something which you're aiming towards, and there's an incentive structure there. Because it's hard just to do it, right? If I was to say to you, I'll just do it, it's like, you need an incentive.
You're anchoring it to something that you're looking forward to. And it creates that positive association as well.
Positive association. And you're working towards something, again, progress principle. And also, I'd also try and link it. It's called habit stacking, where you do it with something you enjoy. So say you don't like the Peloton, but you love watching Desperate Housewives or Made in Chelsea, whatever the show is, Love Island, go on the Peloton and set up a TV or the laptop there. So you watch that while you're doing the Peloton. Habit stack it. Say you love coffee and you don't like doing your content. Everyone's saying personal branding, you've got to do content. Go and have a coffee, your favourite coffee shop, and just write down all your favourite ideas. So it's like you're stacking it with something which you do enjoy, like you say, positive association.
Go and read Atomic Habits if you haven't.
Yeah, great.
I mean, that's fantastic for that sort of thing.
Yeah,
particularly removing the friction between those first steps is key. I think that's a great place to leave it. Alex, I've really enjoyed today. I know we could talk a lot more. Maybe we'll have an opportunity to do that in the future. I'm so excited to see how tomorrow's potential grows and all the things you do with it. I think it's some remarkable stuff already, and it's sorely needed, and your approach is the right one. And I'm looking forward to keeping our eyes on that and seeing how you go.
Thanks so much. The same with work life. It's inspiring to see the journey. So keep doing great things, and I'm sure we'll do this again.
Thank you for listening to the Leaders Circle podcast, a space for leaders, founders, and CEOs to learn, to connect, and to be inspired by the experiences of others. We'll be sharing more conversations with exceptional leaders and experts from across our community, so stay tuned for future episodes. In the meantime, to find out more about work life and the Leaders Circle, please visit our website, work.life. We'll see you soon.